this is great to meet so many of you because I haven't met quite a few of you. I haven't attended any conference since, I think, one in Toronto a few years ago. Before that, I went to different places and I met quite a few of you. Anyway, usually this time I'm invited to do the workshop at the library, public library around the GTA, because April is, as you know, the poetry month. And to celebrate that poetry month, they usually have a workshop. And those workshops are very short, usually give me 1 hour. Most of them I've never heard of a haiku, but they're just interested. So I give them a workshop and it's a hand-on. We write the haiku right there, then leave it as a display at the library. So it's a different type of a workshop than I do today, because just looking at most of you are expert of a haiku, or some of them are even the scholars, published so many books. So just take what you hear today. Some are interested, some, oh, I heard that so many times before, and so on. So here I go with haiku is 100% Japanese word, not like any other Japanese art forms. Something like a flower arrangement, they called in Japanese ikebana. Calligraphy, they call it shodo. So how do you call haiku in Japanese in short term in English? Because they usually have a two term, Japanese and English. So how do you term the haiku in? And some might say, oh, extreme short poem. Well, it is short, but that is not what the haiku is. And because the haiku is involved in the language, mostly, I mean, strictly speaking, if you don't understand the Japanese language, you wouldn't understand 100% what the traditional Japanese haiku is. So this is not a workshop for the Japanese language today, but I just tell you a few things about the Japanese language, then you might understand a little bit more about where the haiku placed in Japan. Language plays very little limited role in Japanese societies. People generally believe that it is needless to speak precisely and expressly with one another, because they take it granted that they share a lot of common assumptions. People are expected to understand the meaning in view of the context of a situation in which they are embedded. So, in other words, tacit understanding is more important than an elaborate word. Many Japanese would like to believe that they should be able to understand each other's without word. That's quite different from Western society, because we will say exactly what we feel, and nothing like a Japanese is less spoken is virtue. It's Japanese philosophy. And then now you know the haiku is a little bit different in the different societies. I do a lot of workshop, I said, and I do at the school, elementary and sometimes secondary school. And the first question I always ask at the class is, what is poem? Because we were talking about haikus, so they know it is a poem. And many will come up with very good answers. Even the small children, they said it has a feeling, has a rhythm, and it's short, And some even say certain structures. So when we talk about haiku, another thing I have to tell them, it has a fixed form. And as you know, a lot of them have a wrong information of or fixed form of 17 syllables and so on and so on. And so we talk about first, before we go into any structures or so on, talk about the feeling, because that is one of the most important things for the haiku. And there is a Japanese saying, hearts and eyes are one. And eyes with a heart recognize the truth of the object you are looking at. We were an animal of the subjective view. So if the poet's subjectivity is turned into the concrete shape, there'll be persuasive effect. This concrete shape, or we call it image, by sketching is not only by word telling what it is, but object is reinforced by the poet's subjectivities. So when you choose an object, it is emphasized to, you have to look well, and also look with one step back. This one step back gives you an opportunity to place yourselves out of the ordinary way and look for the life in the object. So transcribe the life, not what it is. The essential is the cause of emotions. So this is what we're talking about, the feeling. Object is always important. The good dish depends on the good ingredient as well as the chef's skills. So good object, which move your heart, would yell the good heart, good haiku. Talking about those poem element, another one is the rhythm. And this is the one that I usually spend a lot of time when I do the workshop for the adults, not the library short one, but I do sometimes in the teachers group and so on. And because the haiku is such an extreme short poem, perhaps the rhythm is more important. And recently, a scientific study was conducted in Japan to find out the effect of 5/7. The one I'm talking about, 5/7, this is Japanese 5/7 onji, we call it. Onji is the Japanese sound and letter system. Probably you know already. As one onji represent one sound of vowel alone, like a, e, u, e, o, or consonant with a vowel, like ka, ka, ki, ki, and so on. So each onji has a vowel in it. So that's the difference from English letters and the sounds. So each sound has got a vowel. And the word, most of the word, like a haiku or karate or whatever it is basically no accent. And each onji is equal value. So the Japanese haiku is, as I said, it's a 5/7/5 in total, 17 onji. So it sounds like this. I just read it as you can count it, but this is not the way I usually read a haiku. Inochi aru, mizu ni nari tsutsu, ite tokeru. So that is each sound had a vowel, and it was a 17 total. By the way, that haiku was ice melting, water gains its life. That's one of mine. Just forget about mine, but that's how it sounds. And so back to that scientific studies. When the participant was spoken in the form of 5-7 onji, so they had made up the text in 5-7 form, the emotional hormone level went up. And so the scientific study shows, I guess it's proved that 5-7 onji had a special effect for the Japanese. By the way, many Japanese proverbs and commercials are all in this fashion. You can see why, because it has a more effect. However, no similar effective form of exceptional structure of system has been discovered for haiku in English. Beside a fixed form such as 5-7-5, that gives extra tension. When the Japanese has to write the haiku, they have to be in that structures in 17 onjis. So it's not a free. It's not only just a short. You have to be in that fixed form. I don't think it's in the DNA. Not because of the Japanese, you are born as a Japanese, or you have that in the DNA. No, that's not. I think this is known that over 1,000 years, Japanese been familiar with all type of poetry is all in 5-7 or 5-7 combination form. So I think they are used to that type of a poetry. And that's where the 5-7 comes from through the histories. Considering the length and the information contained in the haiku in English and the 3-line structures, this 2, 3, and 2 accented beat, respectively, would yield rhythmical proportion similar to those of traditional Japanese haiku of 5-7-5. Now, this is just the one suggestion: 2, 3, 2 accented beat. Now, this has some questions. Some people say, what accent beat? How about the first main accent? How about the secondary accents and so on? But maybe we can discuss that later on. But this was normally suggested by the person that you probably know, that William Higginson's. He suggested this at first. I think he got the idea from the R.H.A. Bryce of the British, scholar of the haiku. I don't know, he actually suggested a number of a beat, but he did suggested that you should have some sort of a structure of the beat. So Bill Higginson might have got an idea from there. We'll talk about those people later on. But as a non-native English speaker myself, I often find 3-4-3 beat, accented beat, is attractive. That's to me. Sometimes 2-3-3 is fine too. But for your own haiku, other structures such as 3-2-3 or 2-4-2 or 3-3-3, and so on, a different accent, that you should try it and read it. And what I suggest is that you should read it at least twice or 3 times, not just once, and see which one you feel most rhythmical poetry attracted to you. We will talk about this accent things later on, but these suggestions and the many related to the rhythm is a haiku handbook. Probably all of you probably know the haiku handbook. Have you seen it before? I think everybody, probably 80% of our Haiku Canada members already familiar with this one. And this is by late William J. Higginson's, and published in the 1985. I think it's quite old. And some people say, oh, that's old. But I call this one is my haiku Bible. It's old, but very fundamental preaching, I would say, because it was a result of many years of intensive research by Bell, and he was one of the early Haiku Canada members too, and my mentors when I started writing haiku in English. This book was also co-authored by his wife, Penny Harter, who is still the member of Haiku Canada. Bill was excuse me, I like to talk about Bill because he was a scholar of poetry, Japanese language, and particularly the haiku in English and Japanese. And much and devoted to Bill and Tota Kaneko's. Tota Kaneko died 3 years ago. He was the president of a Modern Japanese Haiku societies for many years, but both encouraged and guided me through my haiku path. And now both are not with us. So they might be watching side by side today. But I just mentioned that the Bryce, he's a early 1920s or so. He started writing the history of a haiku and has a 2 volume there. It's quite deep. He's a scholar, and some said he was a prisoner of the war in Japan, so which I'm not really certain, but he influenced many haiku scholars, including William Higginson, and both of those people are one who are loudly recommending the haiku in English should have some sort of structures, not write whatever you like as long as it's short. And both of them, I said structure. Bill Higginson particularly said they should have some sort of beat suggestions, and he was researching before he died some form of English structure for the haiku to attract everybody, but he didn't. Tota Kaneko been writing to me. He used to write to me and always ask me, have you reached the questions? Have you reached my request. And what he meant was if I know anybody, or if I know, or there's some institution who are studying the haiku form, which has a certain structures. And that was one of his, I guess, dying wish. And I had to tell him, no, I'm sorry, I'm too old, or I don't know anybody. And that's how it ended. So they all know that haiku in overseas are popular, and it's getting very high level in what we call the feeling, the first part we talk about, and in a short form. Now the feelings, Japanese are called kokoro, and they take it very seriously. Kokoro is, in Chinese, they write in one word, it's a heart. That's what it is. And the kokoro, or heart, is the same Japanese letter, Chinese letter. And it means originally the organ of a heart itself. But from there, it's extended anything in the core, or anything with a feeling, life, truth, are all this kokoro. In Chinese, I think they pronounce sin, because in Japanese, some certain word has this in it, like a heart. The organ heart is we call sinzo. That means heart organs. And this is the most important thing, and that they already recognize in overseas, in a short form of a poetry, haiku, everybody recognize how important the heart is. The second part we were talking about, the structure, was of course related with a rhythm, is not there yet. And they, according to the Kaneko, he thinks that's the next step that haiku poets overseas has to tackle, how they can do that part of it. And because what we call reverberations, or echo, or resonance, or suggestive, all these has to have a certain structures, and not just the free. And they think that's where they come from. Well, I don't know that all of you are probably all the haiku experts, so I don't know if we need the next one. We just go very quickly the next part. And this is a hint. I call it a hint or tip for the writing a haiku. And if you already know it, just ignore it. The tense, I said tense is present. Why I do this usually is because a lot of other people who just started writing a haiku, this will help, you know. So because number of grammatical omissions are accepted to be reasonably, you know, natural. So number one, tense is present. Article are, an, the can be omitted. Next one is a personal pronouns, usually omitted, because of course the first personal pronoun is a point, so you don't have to say I did, or you know, so on. So the personal and the I, or not always, but most of the time my is omitted. And if possible, prepositions is also omitted. Well, say Mother's Day instead of on Mother's Day, because if you just say Mother's Day, well, that means it's on Mother's Day. But certain time these prepositions give a quite important role to give an extra meaning or extra sound and so on. So not always. For children's class, I always have to tell them no judgmental word, because they use a lot of happy, wonderful, beautiful, and so on. So I have to tell them no judgmental word to express a feeling, but what makes the situation which caused the feeling. So convey the thought through the image. You have to write the image by word. And also that image should be specific. That is the important part. For example, if you just say flower or red flower, well, now it's a little bit more specific. But if you say red rose, now you know exactly what you're looking at. So the image has to be specific. Another thing is, because we are writing the haiku, not like a Japanese are writing the 3 different phrases. So it's almost the same as that we write the 3 line, and no order of which line should go first and second. You have to judge around what is the best effect and so on. And also no complete sentence. In Japanese, they call heaven and earth replacement. And it means that first and third line is that both are 5 onji each. So they usually flip, and for beginners, sometimes you do this first and third flip, and the effect is so different, improved very much. Although Japanese write, 65% of Japanese write season word at the top. This is just something that I discovered not too long ago, that I guess because it gives us very strong seasonal sense, I guess, for the Japanese. Another one that masters in Japan particularly loudly suggesting is that avoid simile or metaphor or comparisons using such as if, or like, that kind of things. Although many haikus are in a metaphor, but if you use those words, it weakens the image. One of the session that I attended, it's a grade 4 class, the children's class. And one of the boy who presented the haiku called, my baby brother toddles in the kitchen like a penguin. And it is one of those, the small one, like penguin. But everybody, whole class thought, oh, that is a good haiku, very short. In the kitchen, baby brother, my baby brother toddles in the kitchen like a penguin. And everybody said, well, that's a good one. But we discussed it. Make it a little shorter, make it a little bit more attractive. And at the end, we did a long time discussion, and it came out at end. Improved version is, in the kitchen, baby brother, my penguin. In the kitchen, baby brother, my penguin. And everybody thought that was a great for grade 4. To start with, in the kitchen, they didn't say my baby brother, because if he said baby brother, it's his baby brother. So they took out the my baby brother. And instead of saying like a penguin, they just said my penguin. And it's very much like a children saying it, but has got a whole feeling in it. And it was one of the occasions I thought this the spells the word. But because they said my penguin, it's for the children's side. Another one is no rhyming. This is one of the things in haiku you have to try. Well, what I'm talking about, rhyming. That's like an English poem, because words used for rhyming are often not accurate to the image. You have to bring something close to, but not accurate to rhyme. If you can do it in rhyming and exactly the image and of your thought, that'll be okay. Another thing is sound effect. Sound effect is sometimes is very strong, and refrain of a word, you refrain it, or sometimes repeating vowel comes up, or sometimes consonant and vowel, or consonant self is repeating, and so on. All these things give a sound effect. And one of the ones that I always like is that Tota Kaneko's, one of his. It sounds like this. Into the heart, green of a barley, slowly, slowly. Into the heart, green of a barley, slowly, slowly. This one has, not only the last line has got slowly, slowly repeating, and the second line has got green of a barley. So it will repeat 3 times, which sounds quite nice. But I have some feeling about his Japanese one. Listen to this. 心臓に麦の青さが徐々に徐々に I do not like it, the sound effect of this one, because the whole thing is going very smoothly in English. But when you listen to the Japanese one, it's got a lot of jaggy sounds in it. And even slowly, slowly, they have a better Japanese. But I respect his, the choice. And also, one thing I really admire is in English, this one says into the heart. Well, because it has an into the heart, most of people feel, oh, that's a heart to your core. But his word is shinzo ni. That is very straightforward to the heart organ. So that's not the usual people say, oh, into my feeling, my thought, or my inner feeling. It is a feeling. So this shows everyone has a different, perspective. Another one I like this sound effect is, you might know this one. This is a very well-known haiku, and it's by Issa. Probably half of you know who the Issa is. Issa Kobayashi is he's an early 18th century master. Basho is a 17th century poet, but Issa is another century later. But he was born in a very poor household, but he's known for his very human sense. And this one is a well-known haiku. And don't swap. Don't swap. Fly rubs hands, rub feet. I think this is one of the Higginson's translations, And he tried to put it into 2-3-2. It went, don't swat, fly loves hand, loves feet. But I changed myself and I showed to someone else and they agreed. And the one I did is, they said it's better. I tell you how I did it. Don't swat. And before that, I just added a little bit. Oh, don't swat. Fly love his hand, love his feet. I read again. Oh, don't swat. Fly love his hands, love his feet. And what I did was I put a his in it. Instead of a love, the fly loves hand, loves feet. I put fly loves his hand, love his feet. And it's got a little bit more humanity in it when you see the pictures. And the whole thing went a little longer as a one extra beat in it. But these are the effect of the sound. And the last one, suggestion of the tips is juxtapositions. And this also so much talk about already, and I think probably all of you know what it is and been using it. Japanese teaching for this is usually they summarize like this, using seemingly two different things to the main object to work as a parallel effect to reach the goal. And as a result, the sensation in the reader's heart from two different things or two different images are greater. So that's, how the Japanese are summarizing the teaching. And again, I just probably bring it out, one of the case that I did in school, because I adopt this method to teach, writing a haiku sometime. It's very interesting. And the instructions are given to write the two short phrase for the children about what they saw in that morning before they come to school or in the school or previously, omitting I saw. So it will become I saw, then the two phrases, but you can omit I saw and the two line. In the meantime, in less than 8 words. So they have to make it a 2 line in 8 words. In the meantime, I write on the blackboard if it's time around this time, usually connected to that season, like a March break, which I don't think they're going to get it this year so soon. Robin's return, or Easter, or the first tulips, or cherry blossoms, or leftover snow, because some people might still have a snow, that sort of thing. Then when students complete their 2 line in the 8 word, then they can choose the one phrase from the blackboard, the one you think they can match to their 2 line, whichever one they like. And they can put it on the top, they can put it at the bottom. And because it's free to pick anyone they like, they can put it on the top, or they can put it at the bottom, or sometimes in the middle if they want to put it between the 2 lines. And it might come up like this. If one might have written, say, a small dog in pink jacket walk. Well, what she or he said was, I saw a small dog in pink jacket walk, but I saw was omitted. Then that child pick one and become a small dog in pink jacket walks, March break. A small dog in pink jacket walks, March break. And that's complete the haiku for beginners, never done it before. And the 2 lines they write themselves, and they pick the one from the blackboard, they complete, and a very good haiku comes up. And it was very successful. And if you ever teach the children the haiku, or even the beginners, very beginners, this is a very good way to introduce the juxtapositions and what, the 3-line haiku is about. Most of the haiku, directly or by implication, express a 2 objects, actions or state of beings, usually without a little grammatical connection between the things expressed. Some haiku contains one essential image, which comes from perceiving or recognizing some relation between 2 or more things, relating each other, but sometimes expressed or sometimes not expressed. There's a one haiku, again, I just gonna read it and see if you feel it and not, the 2 things, but how it goes. Cum laude, Now we don't have it in too often in here, but sometimes you see it in summertime, that cloud and cumulonimbus. That's hard for me to say. Cumulonimbus. That's the first line. Not in his view, in my plan. Cumulonimbus. Cumulonimbus. That's a 2 accent, first and second. Not in his view, in my plan. So you have to figure out what was in this haiku. So this is what we were talking about. You might be wondering why I haven't mentioned the season word, because the Japanese haiku is always talking about, you have to have a one season word or season expressions, so on. It's called kigo in Japanese, K-I-G-O, kigo, and it's a very essential element for the Japanese haiku. The necessity of this season word is originated at the first part of the Lenger, which was linked the poem, the bashos and others, when they started gathering together the poet, and they did one after another, they collected a different verse. And the first one became hokku, they call it, that's the first verse, and later straightened up to the pronunciation haiku. So it's the first verse. And because it's the first verse to start this linked, it's considered as a greeting verse. And in Japanese, or Japanese greeting, it's customary to have a seasonal word or seasonal feeling. So when they say konnichiwa, that is usually you say it's a greeting, but what konnichi means, that's today. And they were trying to say, today is a good day, isn't it? Or today is not so good day. Today's cold, isn't it? But Usually they start with a season or weather connected to a season. So that's where they come from, and they have to have it. The Serenga had to have a season word first to start. Well, the marshals are here, he will tell you, that he's expert for it. Anyway, so that's where they come from. But Japanese believe that nature is different from other people. Japanese in general believe that nature is blessing under which they are allowed to live in harmony with the surrounding. The concept of the nature seem to be correlated more or less to the fact. I think the first one is probably for long rice growing. That was their, main activity for a long time. So always influenced by clear-cut four season. And they also have a quite temperate climate. Not recently though. As you know, that recently they have extreme hard season and weather because of the global climate crisis. And also they have abundant rainfall. And also she also went some typhoons and earthquake and related other disasters. People have to go through the natural seasonal rhythm of a climate change, and at the same time live under the menace of this natures. So the word you pay attention should include those which express feeling of a season, as well as the poet's feeling toward the image of the haiku. So not like a Japanese nature word, but for example, Easter. Look at the word Easter. It indicates a season with all sort of a emotion related to it, religious meaning in it, and other symbolic of Easters. Many Japanese seasonal word contains a great deal of the related information, which offered a variety of feelings and appreciated as crystallization of subtle season evoked by changes. Japanese believe that it is the soul of a haiku. In short, it tells not only the season, but also the expanded space and what we talk about suggestiveness, or maybe some may call resonance. So the way they feel about the nature is a little different. And the Tota Kaneko, I've mentioned already, used to say that you did not have to use a kigo, seasonal word. As long as you have the word which is effective as to replace the season word. So this is a key. You don't have to use a season word. One word which is so effective as a season word for Japanese, if you have that kind of word, you don't need it. Well, as you know, the cherry blossom is a season. I went out every day this week and checking my cherry blossom, but very tight. In Japan, most of the places, cherries are just about finished already, about 6 to 9 days earlier than usual. It comes so precisely there, but now the global warming, it's coming early. and it's almost finished most of the place. And it's called Sakura. Vancouver Cherry Festival group have all kind of event. It's called Sakura something, but Sakura means a cherry. And usually in this case, Sakura means a cherry blossom, but also tree as well. And it's known for the symbol of Japan. It is believed to be more than 80 varieties of a cherry growing in Japan. It has what the Japanese feel very close to their heart. Well, it's like their living philosophy. The color, blossom color is neutral and blended into the early spring. And the flower is pretty simple. And the simple, I mean the simple shape. But what Japanese take Sakura to their heart so dearly is its short life of blossom. Sometimes it only lasts one day, depending on the weather. But Sakura is known for very short life. And it suggests life of living things, all the things which exist. That's how nothing lasts long. It could end anytime. That is their feeling. And that's why they cherish Sakura so much. Collection of a season word is called Saijiki. And I don't think you really have to have it, but have you known this one? This was, again, it's William Higginson's. I think this was published in 1995. And all 100 of the season was in it, and the haiku, and also other knowledge, information about the haiku, if you are interested. This is published at Kodansha, Kodansha International, New York. And it is a good book to have. You don't have to have it though. You know, by the way, quite a few of the Haiku Canada members' work are included in this one. I think that's just about all the, maybe we should have a little slide and have a little reading. Can I have a first slide? Some of the haiku here, these are the haiku that I like, and probably you are familiar with. The first one is Betty Drovoniuk. She's, of course, she was born in St. Louis and in 1919. And after moving to Cambermere, Ontario, I don't know where that is, but anyway, it's someplace in Ontario, 1948. And she stayed in Canada and became the president of Haiku Canada in 1979 till 1982. And her expertise covered the haiku, haibun, haiga, and also her haiku critics and the review appeared in many publications. Of course, we know her because of our annual award event. And it goes, rusted train tracks, a young maple turning red, rusted train tracks, a young maple turning red. Next one is Ryuta Ida. In Japanese way, we call Ida Ryuta, and he's a very well-known master. And I read it first. In deep winter, not a house hidden by home village. In deep winter, not a house hidden my home village. He was born in 1920, and his father is a very well-known haiku master, Dakotsu Ida, and he was awarded so many, both father and himself awarded so many awards and then numerous books published. Let's go to the third one. You know this person, James. I put it here, I think bucket, but I think he is a Hackett, Hucket. Yeah, James Hackett. Probably I spelled it wrong, but you know him. He's from the States. He's a well-known poet. Lily, out of the water, out of itself. Lily, out of the water, out of itself. This one is so well known, I think everybody know, probably. The next one, this one, if anybody remembers, Susan Aiken was the Haiku Canada member, 1980s and 90s, and the last 20 years I haven't heard of her, so I don't know what she's doing, but she's a well-known woodblock print artist. She was trained that art in Japan. Her work was all over the Japan and Canada. Some royal families and the big institutions in Japan, they possess her print. And it goes like this: slicing, longitude, latitude, into the peach. Slicing, longitude, latitude, into the peach. This one has such a light touch of the sound effect, and I like it. She used to make a book, handmade, the haiku book, all bounded herself, handwritten, and a beautiful book. But she lived, I think she still lives in the place called Prospect, Nova Scotia. Okay, now is that all on this slice? Okay, the next one are children's haiku, because I love the children's, my favorite. As they feel with their eyes, of their own heart, and are not afraid of express. So I like it. And I just want to do this first one. Dear roams, quiet as snow, his kingdom. Dear roams, quiet as snow, his kingdom. This one is very special. This was a 10 years old American boy, and this original was written 575 syllable format, and very well done. And but some expert changed it and into this form. And, I don't have it original, but for 10 years 10 years old. It was done very well. The next one is also this one, the bullfrog one, is a 9-year-old Canadian. And it goes, bullfrog jumps off a log, pond of a dream. Bullfrogs jumps off a log, pond of dreams. This is a 9-year-old Canadian. The next one is, in supermarket, apple and roll looks angry. In supermarket, apple and roll look angry. This is a 10 years old Japanese. The next one is waterfalls, life and language thundering down. Waterfalls, life and language thundering down. This is rather, sounds like a grown-up haiku. Actually, it's only 11 years old, a New Zealand child. And the last one in this group is, night ends soon. In the fold remains a silver moon. Night ends soon. In the fold remains the silver moon. This is 12 years old Canadians. Before getting to the next one, the next one, I would like to do the George Seurat one first, because when that book came to me, arrived, I was so attracted. I think it's the next slide. Yeah, okay. And it was in Joyce, one of our long Haiku Canada friend and haiku expert. And his haiku was touched my heart most. So let's go with this one. Creekside turtle, the way a poem emerges from its shell. Creekside turtle, the way a poem emerges from its shell. George Seurat. This is a very specific image when you're looking at the turtle, and followed by the second line of a 4 accented in the beat, and 3 accent beats from its shell to settle down. It's a brilliant, I think, when you read it and think about it. And he also wrote this one. This is quite different. This is one of his early, because I think it was in 1985. Canadian anthology by Dorothy Howard. She made a big, I think I have it somewhere. It's a big book of anthology book. And it was Dorothy Howard and Andrew Duham both, I think, edited this book. And in it, each haiku, another piece in an endless jigsaw. Each hike, another piece in an endless jigsaw. I think this is brilliant. And the next one is, how precious green leaves. Oh, this is going into the last one. And those two, I just want to finish very quickly because those two are from bashos. They have all different kind of name, how to call it. His book, Narrow Road into the Interior, or they have some other name, but both are from that collections. And the first one is, how precious green leaves, young leaves, the sunlight. How precious green leaves, young leaves, the sunlight. And if I read it in Japanese, you will feel different way. Ara toto, aoba wakaba no hino hikari. Ara toto, aoba wakaba no hino hikari. And it looks quite ordinary just at the glance, but a lot of thought for the effect were put into this the haiku. By the way, the basho is known for collection. He wouldn't just make it one and put it into the book. Although the place that he visit or he meets somebody asks, give a piece of paper and ask him to write, and he just write, instantly for that person. Well, that's it. But any other time, he's known for correction. Sometimes he collect a dozen times to become the one he's satisfied with. And so these might be not original. But the first one has second line has a aoba wakaba, and it's got vowel o on the 5 times repeated, for the 7 onji. So o is repeated. And third line is slightly different. It means sunlight, but this sort of, it's a place he composed. This one is a Nikko. And the Nikko in Chinese letter, you write sun and light. So he kind of respected this place, and overlapping the place of he was writing this is in Chinese letter, in Japanese called a Nikko, is in Chinese way, that's sunlight. So he gave up the sun and light. He has this quite often in many other haiku, the overlapping, the technique. Sometimes sounds overlapping, sometimes written Chinese letter overlapping. And another one more famous haiku for the basho. I read it in English first. Summer grass, those warriors dream tracks. Summer grass, those warriors dream tracks. In Japanese, ara toto. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's the same one as repeated here. No, this one has to be different. Okay, I will read it. 夏草やつわものどもが夢の後。夏草やつわものどもが夢の後。This Japanese version, the bottom that's the same as the one before. but the last ones are slightly different. And what it meant, summer grass, those warriors dream trucks. Summer grass, those warriors dream trucks. When this was composed, this was lunar calendars, and although the first part is summer grass, probably it was a late summer or autumn, and the grass are not rush green, but brown and weary already. And the battle in his thought, he's talking about the warriors. He must be at the site of a battle. And this battle in his thought were fought between the clans of Taira and the Minamoto. That was a few years, the previous and his time. Basho was a favorite at the Yoshitsune of Minamoto clan. These two clans are fought, and one of the clan called Minamoto clans, and his commander called Yoshitsune. He's a favorite. So that knowledge, you probably helped what he was thinking of this battleground, and the warriors. So that is my reading part finished, and I just quickly read what I was trying to say was in Japan, 100 haiku groups exist, and most of them hold it's called a kukai, and ku is for short for haiku. Kai means meet, so the kukai means haiku meet, and those 100 group, they meet usually monthly. They get together, not on Zoom or anything like that. They actually meet together, and they send them in the haiku first, and they were given a random list with no name, and they selected their choice. They do all kind of discussion why they choose it, give a comment, and the meaningful of this gathering is you hear the author's thought, author's perspective, what actually he or she thought, and their thought. And many times we send them in some haiku somewhere, and we see the results. Somebody choose a good one, so, but we don't hear what the author's thought is. And this is why I recommended this. If your group with you or online or in person, if we can have a kukai with a few poets, it's a very beneficial, educational, and fun to be social. And actually, I have been in kukai here with other few Haiku Canada members and other haiku poet for 9 years. And we were doing online kukai. We just call it e-kukai. And it's been going 9 years, and it's very enjoyable. So I recommended if we can start something like that, it helps. So I thank you today for Ignatius, for your organizing, and Graham for your technical assistance. Otherwise, I would never be able to do this. So thank you very much, particularly to those of you who are here in such a beautiful afternoon. You could have been outside. Let's see if any chats in there. Can I see it?
So no one has asked questions yet. If you unmute yourself, if you have a question.
Yeah, that's on. Yeah.
My goodness, we're all just overwhelmed. Thank you so very much. Oh, there's something here.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next one. Next person. Yes.
Thank
I
you,
don't know
Kim.
why I got mine. I should have done it at the end of it.
Yeah. Well, it was
terrific.
wonderful, and I really appreciate you taking your time to do that. Very
Yes,
much
you.
appreciated.
Great. So nice to meet all of you. Yeah,
Thank you very much, Kimiko.
thank you.
Thank you, Kimiko. Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
If you want a copy of my book, just let me know. I'll pay the postage. That's okay.
I must admit, I had a wonderful time learning a lot about the internal sense and feel of a haiku. It just there was a lot of really good stuff, and as a form of exercise, I had on my screen there somewhere, I had a haiku I wrote, and as you were giving your lecture and as you were expressing these feelings, I just sat there and kept editing and editing and editing. And no, I'm not going to read it. But it was a really wonderful experience just to follow through with you and do the editing and get much more out of it than I had originally. And I really, really enjoyed this concept, this idea of the internal rhythm. Something I personally haven't paid any attention to is rhythm in a haiku. I paid attention to rhythm in poetry, in traditional English poetry or Canadian poetry, but I hadn't paid attention to the internal rhythm of a haiku, which is going to be very different in English than in Japanese. It was a really an eye-opener, and I thank you so much for that.
I found it quite interesting, Kim. I've been, listening in for this whole thing, and as a music arranger and composer, it struck me that when you were talking about the onji and the group of 17, syllables and what have you, that it would make a fascinating study to compose a piece of music for orchestra that was based on the concept of 17. When we think of time signatures in music, we think of 4/4 time or 3/4 time or 4/8 or even 8/8 time. And something like 17/8 would be very interesting if it was combined with haiku poetry reading along with orchestra backdrop to that, so you sort of got my mind percolating a little bit here about maybe a project for the future. And it was great. For those of you don't know, Kim is my mother-in-law. So I know her. I know her very well. But this particular talk has been really great for me because it gave me a bit more insight. Of course, more insight into haiku, but also a bit more insight into you as a person, that I know and love. And so, I think that I gleaned a lot from this particular lecture and dissertation about this wonderful art form. So, and I have 2 copies of your book, by the way. Thanks so much.
Charles, can I just say, look up Ueda. She's a Japanese Canadian conductor, musician. She writes music. It's Leslie Ueda, Ueyeda, I believe, and she has published some sheet music. She's published some of the winners from the Vancouver Cherry Blossom Festival, and she's set them to music.
You know what? I think I've heard of her because she did something. If memory serves me correct, she did something a while back, not too long ago, with either the Vancouver or the Victoria Symphony. There was something that anyway, it caught my eye at the time. Yeah, I'll check that out. But you know, I'm very interested in stuff that's for lack of a better word, cross-cultural and blending cultures, and showing what the co-relationship is between different cultural mechanisms. You see, or a collaborative experience between art and music, or poetry and music, or visual arts and music, dance and music, etc. There's a correlation, and it all boils down to a lot of it to the introspective study of what the rhythmic content is about. And Kim was talking very early about the rhythms of some of this material, and I found that quite fascinating. So maybe there's more to come on this. We'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Kim. That was great.
To go with your talking about a kukai, does anyone have experience how you set up something like that, a monthly group in your town?
Then you can explain to them.
Well, actually, I've inherited those kukai, and she's still in it, so she could probably explain it better than I can. But right now, I'm waiting for 2 more people to send in their haiku. We now have 11 people in the group, and what we're going to do is send 3, to me, and I'll lay them out without names, so there'll be anonymous people, and then send it back on a grid to everybody so they can make comments on their choice. And then they send that back to me, and then I will print it all up so that they can see the comments. But what I just learned from Kimiko is that we could be making comments about our own haiku, and that might be an interesting addition. So I thank you for that. That sounds really relevant. That's what we're going to do. We do it on the equinoxes. We do it 4 times a year, the last month in the row across the calendar. So solstice, equinox, and it is fun. It's lovely to see what people do, and I really agree. I think we have only 2 of us maybe in the group that maybe only speak one language, and I'm interested in what the other languages in the background, or the first languages that people have to work with, how that impacts what they're doing. And listening to what Kimiko was saying, it really affects how she writes, and she's just really opened that up, so I can see that now as to where she's coming from. And I think we could do a lot by thinking about those languages and how they just percolate through what we've done with a Japanese traditional form. So I'm excited about it.
How do we get involved in this kukai?
You start one.